A male squirrel picked up 10 nuts in the morning. He ate 3 for breakfast, 3 for lunch, and 3 for dinner, and he stored 1 nut for the future. So after a month, the squirrel looked at his pile of nuts and he felt proud about it. We know that there's about 30 nuts, correct? But he just sees it as a big pile, bigger than any that he has squeezed into his mouth before, and he feels very contented. He thought that a pile of nuts can last him a lifetime. So the squirrel retired from picking up nuts. He stopped and he started eating the nuts 3 by 3 for each meal as usual. After one day, only 9 nuts were used. Not too bad. But after the second day, it started to get a bit worrying. The pile was dwindling, correct? And by the third day, he was left with something that he usually brings back only. The huge pile of nuts stored were almost gone and he became so sad. Retirement seemed like a joke to him and he asked himself how is he ever going to expect to retire. On the other side of the bank, a female squirrel was also picking nuts. She picked up 5 nuts, not 10, and ate only 2. She gave her baby squirrel 1 nut to eat also. At the end of the day, she was still left with 2 which she could keep aside. She understood that storing nuts was a long-term game. If one day today the effort can feed one day in future tomorrow, that also means 1 year of work today and storing up for 1 year can also feed 1 year in future. To her, that's not too bad already. She continued to store day by day, month by month, and year by year, and kept track of the amount of nuts that she stored up. After many years, her baby squirrel was big enough. She packed a big stack and set it off with him. She counted the remaining nuts and figured she has enough already. And anyway, she's a bit older now. She would be comfortable eating just 1 nut a day. She decided to retire. And as she looked across to the male squirrel on the other bank, she still saw him unsure of what to do for his own future. What's the moral of the story? The first is that the female squirrel understood that one effort today might help one day tomorrow. The male squirrel, on the other hand, thought building up for long-term retirement is just a 1-month job. A clear mismatch on the timeline of effort and reward. So if we want a long-term reward, do expect to put in long-term effort. The second is that the female squirrel built up a bigger stash even though she brought back less nuts per day, correct? The male squirrel picked up 10, ate up 9, and at the end of the day left with 1 only. But the female picked up 5, ate 2 for herself, gave 1 to baby, and left with 2 at the end of the day. So the moral is, it's not how much you pick, but also how much you keep. The third is that the female squirrel understood that if she cuts down, the amount that she stored up can easily be more than enough. In her older years already, she expects to eat only 1 a day, while the male squirrel still wanted to eat 9 nuts. So the third moral is, if retirement needs are less, the right amount becomes a lot easier. Hopefully you like the small little story that I created for you, and as always, smash the like button because it's taken of hours to produce this, and I'm filming this late at night because I saw this article on financial freedom and I thought of a simple way to try to narrate for each and every one of us to have the right expectations as well as to have the right approach to get there eventually. I wish for you, for all of us, to be able to be financially free because that is a very important state of mind to get to. But this article from this finding actually suggested that financial freedom seems not possible for 44% of people surveyed. We can see that as a horror. 44% feel is not possible. But also we can see it from the other side, which is 56% feel it's possible. So why do almost half think it's impossible and half thinks it's possible? Why do half feel and act like the male squirrel while the other half aims and sets the right pieces in motion like the female squirrel? I would like to draw some important discussions with some of the findings from this report itself. Let me pull up for you to see the key headline figures. From the survey, Singaporeans say that they need around $612,000 in cash to feel financially free, which is an increment of 8% from last year's figure of $566K. I don't know about you, leave in the comment sections what you think is the right amount, but take note again, this is the right amount in cash, does not include CPF, correct? So right amount of cash. If you see $612,000, do you feel financially free? Or are you feeling that with a much lower figure, $300,000, you feel you are kind of okay already? Or you feel you need $1 million, $2 million, or $3 million? Leave them in comment sections. because this 612 was from the amount averaged out from the surveys. Then on the other side, to get 612, right hand side, you realize that with the average that Singaporeans are saving, which is 1,683, you take 30 years to get there. This 1,683 is actually a lower figure than last year, and last year's figure was 27 years to get there already. Now let me critique on this finding a bit for us to have better thinking points about retirement. $612,000 in cash to feel that retirement feeling. I do like that figure because it means about $2,500 per month in terms of cash flow if there's a 5% dividend yield, correct? If you invest it, don't just keep it as cash, don't do that. If you invest it, there is passive income. So I think 612K is something that I would think is actually a good figure. But the further deeper question is, does this apply to everybody? Do we all need $2,500 per month in retirement? Everybody. Just now a story, female squirrel has expected herself to cut back on her own expenses. She's going to consume 1 nut a day instead of 2. So if $612,000 is very far away from where you are, maybe we need to adopt that approach with the female squirrel, which is you need to be comfortable with spending less. It's not to be miserly and sad and miserable about having less, but sometimes instead of taking taxi, taking a 30-minute walk is just as good in retirement because the time is a lot more flexible. Instead of eating in CBD where the vegetable rice is already like $6.50, why not eat something simpler or home cook it where you can settle your meals at a fraction of that cost? So is there a possibility that not everybody of us need $2,500 per month in passive income, and therefore 612K is good, Joshua is good, but maybe different strokes for different folks? If the amount that you need in expenses can be lowered down, can be watered down, maybe half of this or 3/4 of this might be a right figure for you. The main thing, however, I'd like to drive is I realized that this 612K is actually an 8% increment from last year's 566K. The first thing is many investors don't get 8% rate of return in terms of their investments. How can this inflate by 8%? Are we having a lot of recency bias or not? Maybe you have gone to the coffee shop and you realize that it's 10 cents or 20 cents more expensive. And when you think about food, you realize that the inflation seems very high. But again, food is just one component of inflation. With respect to median pay, our food cost is actually quite low. You compare to even Malaysia, our food cost to pay ratio I think is much lower than them. If you go to, for example, Australia, which I did a trip to Sydney before, I realized eating out there is so much more expensive. And not just on food also, all angles of expenses. Has it increased by 8%? I think Singapore has done a good job in controlling inflation. Transport costs not too high in terms of the inflating rate. Government hospitals, yes, there's inflation, but also not that scary high. It's the private side that's really, really high. So in terms of 8% increment from previous year, I think there's some recency biases. Most of the surveys are not putting the right long-term inflation, which seems to be 2 to 4% only when they come out with this figure. Again, if we use 8% increment year on year, you would realize we will get to $1 million needed in just 5 years' time. That's very unrealistic, correct? So there certainly needs to be some relooking at this estimate. The next that I'd like to critique also is this 1,683 per month saved up. While it looks a lot, I would like to look at it in totality and suggest that maybe it's actually not too much. The first thing is, it's still a $50 drop from last year's average savings of 1,733. Therefore, when your savings rates drop, the number of years needed to get there becomes 30 years. Very demoralizing when last year's 27 was already very bad. So the question must be, how can a savings rate drop when our median income has increased? Let me pull out the chart. 2023 median income was 5,197, which is a 2.5% increment on the previous year. The question you may be thinking is, hey Josh, that means that the inflation is higher than the median income increment. That's why the savings rate has dropped. Really? I would like to suggest that depends on how we define savings rate. Does it only mean earned income or not? Or can we even include interest income? Because when inflation is high, our interest income is also high. T-bills for last year, many clocked 3+% in terms of return. So a 50,000 parked into T-bills can easily generate like $750 of interest really in just 6 months. You average it out, that could cover that $50 increment one, right? That's not the only point I'd like to contend. The 30 years part is where I think I need to adjust that finding, because I don't want to demoralize everybody. I want to share optimism on how to get there. I want to help you build your journey positively. The biggest problem with that is you are saving up money with zero rate of return. Let me show you the impact when you use an investment rate of return to the amount. With $0 to start, if you simply save $1,683 for 30 years, your capital will be about $605,000. But if you get a 5% rate return, you actually more than double it. You reach $1.34 million. Not bad, correct? Sizable enough for retirement, correct? If you have a 10% rate return, you're very good, very proficient with it. You will reach $3.322 million after 30 years. Unimaginable, correct? But very possible. You have to be in equities, of course. 10% may not reach, but 5 to 10%, I do believe that's where majority who are prudent and do the right investment steps can actually hit. If you have investment assets and they are all over the place, you like better direction, better guidance, or if you have cash, CPF that's idling that could be maximized a lot better to build your wealth, let me know. In the links below, I'll be leaving my contacts to reach for one-to-one retirement planning process. I do weekly cases to solve retirement issues that could even include mortgage, upgrading, downgrading. These are thorny issues that I can resolve, and I've done so for many private clients. So if independent advice is what you want, look for links below to get in touch. So again, don't leave your monies idling in a bank account or under the bed. That doesn't help retirement. In discussing retirement, there are two factors. One is the amount of capital that you can contribute. The other is the long-term compounding return. So if we simply use 5%, very conservative, you would realize that the journey shortens from 30 years to just 19 years. If you're age of 31, you could reach there by age of 50. If you're age of 40, you could reach there before the age of 60. Not too bad. So again, learn to invest. The finding does not reflect if you put your monies to work. And just now I mentioned, 1,683 seems like a lot, but actually, for most occupations, there are bonuses, correct? Then, can a smaller amount be saved up plus everything on the bonuses side? Take for example, 500 per month saved up and 15k from bonuses saved up totally. There are many ways to perceive this 1,683 that is saved up per month. Let me know in the comment sections again whether you feel this amount is too high or too low. The third thing that I'd like to debate on is this part of where the findings have surfaced on the challenges towards achieving financial freedom. At the very top, insufficient income, that's voted by 55% of correspondents, followed by unforeseen expenses. Maybe there's just lump sum medical needs, suddenly got ill, got cancer. Yes, medical cost starts to step up. Job insecurity, challenges to financial freedom, that part we can all understand. And last but not least, debt burden. I think that part is where I'd like to touch on a bit more. But the first part of insufficient income, 55% were voted. You know, just now our starting story of the male squirrel who couldn't save even though he picked 10 nuts a day, and the reason is because he ate 9 nuts. With 1 nut left, which is just 10% savings rate, he must be feeling that he isn't picking up enough nuts, which in this case is he's not earning enough. May not be true, because the female squirrel is earning half of that, yet being able to save twice as much. It is true that working on income is important for financial freedom, but that one takes time. The immediate one that can solve things is cutting back on expenses. Hopefully that answers the question. Then let's move on to debt burdens right at the bottom, 28%. I don't think many of them have expensive spending habits, like getting themselves into credit card debt, but I think many of them might have car loans. In Singapore, very easily you incur 1,000 per month in car loan, and then also in housing costs. If you can't pay off your home, it's very likely you have mortgage stress. That's why I'd like to lead this discussion next to the 5 levels of financial freedom that I've created for you. And before I get that, smash the subscribe button, especially like content like this that helps you in your financial journey and discuss more retirement planning concepts with you. Without further ado, let me present to you Josh Tan's 5 levels of financial freedom. Let's start with the very bottom. Below that, I think cannot be discussing about financial freedom, where there's just an urgent need to fix the basics. For this don't own anybody starting phase to discuss about financial freedom, I think the home must be fully paid off first, or have the resources to pay it off already. No dependents, or the dependents' needs are all prepared already. Then at least this is the first layer of financial freedom. And once you are at this phase, you realize that, hey, at least all my obligations are done. I just need to save up for myself. I'm not too bad already. If I can't save up much, then I have to eat economic rice every day. Something like that. One baby step above it is if I lose my job, no worries level. We are stacking the levels, which means to reach the second level, the home must be able to be fully paid already, dependents prepared already. Then stopping work for 1 year with no problem means easily there's 100,000 spare saved up that can allow the person to take a sabbatical and not feel financial stress at all. The third level of financial freedom is the I should have enough level. You would feel that when you have cash that you can draw for at least 10 years. Typically, this amount from my ballpark figure would be 3 to 500,000 saved up or invested already. You know, if you are suddenly without income, this 3 to 500,000 of assets you can draw down over 10 years and you are not too desperate yet. So there's this awareness that you're not too bad. If you do some part-time work, at least the budgets can still fit. Maybe semi-retirement mode already, coast fire already. These are terms that I think is quite in this level. I should have enough. Then the next is I definitely have enough. This is where you have investment assets, rent income, etc. that provide you passive income close to your current expenses. I use the term close to your current expenses because actually in retirement, through many discussions and much research, I would confidently say that it's possible to cut down expenses very easily. If your current expenses are $5,000 as a working adult, you may not need $5,000 of passive income. If you have $3,000, $4,000, maybe you are in this phase. I definitely have enough already. And in this phase, typically your investment portfolio will be worth at least $500,000 to $2 million. Congrats if you reach this phase. This is quite high up in the financial freedom level. I believe everybody should aspire to get there, and everybody can get there with the right steps. That's why we're doing this discussion, correct? Last but not least, right at the very top, your passive income is way bigger than your expenses. Per month, per year basis, you still have surplus, even if you don't have active income. This compounds your asset base bigger and bigger, such that you're not only guaranteed enough for yourself, but more than enough to provide for your next generation or your dependents. Legacy, this part sounds nice, not everybody needs to get there. If you want to retire earlier, then jolly just aim for the orange one will do. With that, I'd like to conclude things. 44% of people say it's not possible, 56% of people say that it is. I hope that more in this 44% start to see the right discussing points and move towards joining the 56% and have that feeling that they have enough for retirement. I wish that for you, and thank you for watching right at the very end. With that, I'll sign off and see this previous video I have, which is 5 reasons why you can retire right now.